And welcome, Boker Tov, and we'll get started. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So we're on to obviously a new Sedra. It's already Monday, but at any rate, the Parsha is Re'eh, and we just zoomed through these passages in Deuteronomy. And I like to tell the congregation, it's a sort of bittersweet time for me as we sort of close up the Torah. But let's get started here. And essentially, one of the principles of Deuteronomy is that Moses presents the Jewish people with a choice. And you'll see, and he says this in different ways, but here he says it very, very clearly. He's already mentioned it in previous chapters, but to understand that we have a choice as human beings, either to revere God, to follow the Torah, and to try and act as faithful followers of the Torah and of Hashem and servants of Hashem, or not. And the consequences from either choice are pretty much inevitable. And so here we go. So he says, Re'eh, see, Anochi noten lifnechem hayom. Anochi, I, noten, place, lifnechem, before you today, hayom. Bracha uklala, a blessing or a curse. It's one or the other. That's the choice. There's no middle ground here. It's either one or the other. Right? I mean, obviously, we are going to face adversity, even if we're blessed, and very often, if we're really honest about it, that adversity very often can turn out to be a blessing. So let's see what Rashi says here. So he says, he comments on the Re'eh Anochi Noten, behold, I give, bracha uklala, blessing and a curse, or a curse, but it is and a curse in this case, because later on, he's going to say, Ha'amorot v'har grizim u'v'har eval, which are going to be declared on Mount Grizim and Mount Eval. There are two mountains I'm going to show you. I'm going to stop this share 1 second and start a new share. And this is what here they are. I think this is helpful. Okay. I don't know if you're seeing it. Unfortunately, it's not showing up in my window.
We can see it. We can see it.
There it is. Yeah, it wasn't showing up in my computer. Okay, this is actually not the one I want. Let's see. Are you seeing anything different now?
Oh. Yes, we're seeing now. Oh. Okay, now we're seeing something even different.
I'm so glad, because that's what I wanted you to see. Because here's Mount Eval and here's Mount Grizim, and you see they're near Nablus, Shechem, and they're on the west side of the Jordan. And he's going to talk about this to you. Okay, so this is interesting because this is called Samaria and this is called Shechem. And frankly, I thought they were one and the same. So, boy, live and learn, right? At any rate, these two mountains are where the blessings are going to be given, I believe, on Mount Eval, and the curse on Mount Grizim. And these two mountains, which are so close to each other, are extremely different. I don't know that I have an actual picture of them. I can try and see if I can find it. Let me do a quick search. I think it's worth doing. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm gonna do this. Gonna check, since you're seeing at, okay, Mount, oops, Mount Eval. Okay, here it is. Let's see if we have a picture of it. I guess this is the best we can do here. This is a picture of it. I guess there's some more pictures of it. I wonder if that's Shechem here, unless this is not in Israel.
Oh, that's the view. It was the view from the mountain to Tel Aviv.
or to Tel Aviv or something. They're not actually showing it to you, which is a shame. I was hoping to have an actual picture of it because I wanted you to see the difference. And let's try this. All right, let's try this. I don't know that I'm going to get much better. This is the same picture we just had it before, right?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. This is good. So Mount Eval and Mount Gerizim. So these are the two mountains. Here's a good one. Let me see if I can pop that up, although you can't really see a great difference. Great. This is not happening the way I was hoping it was going to happen. All right. And this is what it looks like. Can you see everything in this picture here? Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
So you can see. Okay. So I think I had it the wrong way around. Of course, right? So they're saying that Mount Gerizim was the mount of blessing and Mount Eval was the mount of cursing. And half the tribes stood on one. This is described specifically in Deuteronomy later on. All right. How 6 of the tribes stood on one side and 6 of the tribes stood on the other side. And the priests stood in the middle. And they, on the one side, they said, blessed is the person. And they're like a number of blessings. And then there's a cursed is someone who does the opposite. So again, the choice is given. But I think the idea was, at least at some time, there was a distinction between the two mountains, and that's why I'm just looking here, but I don't see anything that, I mean, let's see. If this is Mount Gerizim, can you see my what I'm pointing to?
Yeah.
Can you see this? So if this is Mount Gerizim and this is Mount Eval, you can see that Mount Gerizim is somewhat more fertile than Mount Eval. And I think that was one of the reasons why they chose to use that, because it really would drive home the idea of the difference of the blessing and the curse. Let me go back now. Okay.
I can see how you would have thought that they were one, though.
Yeah, well.
Come on, we all learn something new every day.
You know something? I have to share with you that doing this with you, all right, just makes me realize how little I know. And I'm seeing things that I never would have questioned before, and now I'm questioning, my own knowledge regarding these things.
That's wonderful.
Well, yeah, I think it's healthy. So Rashi tells us this, even though here in Deuteronomy itself, we aren't told. But when he says, I am placing before you, that's the question. What do you mean placing before you? And that's why Rashi has to tell us that he's actually referring to something that's going to happen later on in Deuteronomy, where we're going to be reading about the blessings on Har Gerizim and the curses on Mount Eval. So here we go, being more specific now. Et habracha, the blessing, and here the grammar is quite difficult here. Asher tishma'u, because the word asher means which, right? And it's hard to translate this. Excuse me. Hold on a second. And try again. So the blessing, and then asher tishma'u. So tishma'u means you will hearken, right? You will listen to el mitzvot Hashem Elokechem, to the commandments of Hashem your God. And we'll see how this is worked out. So it sounds like it should mean, right, the blessing if, right, if, but asher is not if, asher is im. I mean, if is im. Asher is a relative pronoun, like that or which, right? So I played around with it and sort of came up with the blessing so that you hearken to the Lord your God. Let me finish the sentence and then look at the difference. Asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom, which I command you today. And going on to one more sentence, v'haklala, and the curse, Im lo tishma'u, if you do not listen, el mitzvot Hashem Elokechem, to the commandments of the Lord your God. V'sartem min haderech, and you turn away from the way, min haderech, the path, asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom, which I command you this day. Lalechet acharei Elohim acherim, to go after other gods, asher lo yidatem, which you never experienced. Okay, so let me just play around. There's a lot being said here. So I'm sorry, but forgive me, I'm stumbling over myself. Let's take a look at the Rashi, and then we'll try and pack this all together. Et habracha, the blessing. And he translates asher as almanat, for the sake of, right? In order that. So that's a clarification, asher tishma'u. So I would understand the word almanat to mean, in order that, okay, asher tishma'u, that you hearken, which is very interesting. So it's not, the blessing isn't coming after you observe the commandments. The blessing is preceding the commandments, and it's as if it's being said, and that's why I think he uses the word asher here, that it's as if it's being said, God is going to bless you, and God is blessing you in the hopes that that is going to awaken in your hearts a sense of appreciation, that it's not that God expects you to accept the commandments first and then he'll bless you, but rather that you recognize the blessings that you have and consequently fulfill the commandments. And I think that's so deep, right? And I know I've said it many times, and it's almost a cliche for me, but you know, it's not a cliche. It all starts with appreciation. That if you can get up in the morning and the first thing you think of is how grateful you are to wake up, if you can compartmentalize every element of your life and see a reason to be thankful, that is a huge, huge, and I would even go to say foundational spiritual practice. And I think it turns your life around. It is so easy for us to see life with a jaundiced eye. And it's a matter of training, because I don't sense that we are naturally appreciative. If we are, we're lucky. If we're born that way, we are so fortunate. If our parents raised us that way, we are so fortunate. But life really is what you make of it. I'm going to, forgive me, I shouldn't apologize, right? Because I'm going to do this anyway. There's at the beginning of, I believe, at the very beginning of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales, of his collection, he tells the story of the time when humanity, or the beings that existed, wanted to defeat God. I mean, obviously, this is metaphoric for human behavior, and because they knew that that God is so full of love. I'm trying to think of oh yes, okay, that God is so great, and God is so full of love, and God is so the essence of goodness. What they did was they created a mirror, and this mirror had a very special quality, and the quality of this mirror was that anything that was great, it minimized. Right? It minimized anything that was great. And so they believed that if they took this mirror and showed it to God, that because God is so great, if God looked into that mirror, God would become nothing. Okay, nothing. And so they planned to go up to heaven and show God this mirror. And they were able to achieve this much, that they got higher and higher. And what they discovered was, as they got higher and higher, they started to tremble. And they trembled, and they got to a point that they were trembling so much that the mirror slipped from their hands and fell down to the earth. And that is where the trouble started, because the mirror shattered into thousands and millions of tiny little slivers. And these little slivers of glass got into some people's eyes, and others got into some people's hearts. That's the story.
It's a great story.
That's why I remembered it. I must have read that story, haven't read it since, like maybe 40 years ago. Yeah. And it's the tragedy. It's such a powerful, message. And this is what this is saying too, right? I mean, look at the way, it's simply a matter of syntax here and how he shifts the meaning, how Rashi helps us gather the shifted meaning of this particular thing. That God starts out by blessing us and hoping that that is going to motivate us to want to follow God's commandments. Okay, so the curse. So this is what's going to happen if you don't pay attention, right, to God's commandments. But it's a specific commandment, and that's really important. Let's see if Rashi, So Rashi's going to comment on it because he's saying, you go off the way, and then it says to follow other gods, which I believe Yod-Yadatim, which you did not know or you did not experience. And I realize again that it sounds trite for me to say it, but I have to say that we don't recognize what we mean when we worship idols. But it's when you worship something, you think it's the most important thing in the world, and you think it's the source of your happiness, of your ultimate joy, and there are many things that people worship. And it's not that these things aren't important, right? It's not that they have no value. It's that the subtlety is that we place more value on them than on recognizing the source of our existence and recognizing that we have a way in which to connect to that source and to try to bring that source into this world. Because if you think about it, because the mitzvot emanate, this is the theory, right? This is the hypothesis, that these mitzvot emanate from a divine source. So if we then practice those mitzvot, we are actually extensions of the divine. Because if I ask you to deposit, let's say, $100 for me in the bank, and I give you the $100 and you take it and deposit it in the bank, it's as good as if I personally deposited it. So one way of looking at this enterprise called the Jewish religion is to become angels, because that's exactly what angels do. Angels don't have a choice. Angels have to do what they're programmed to do, what God wants them to do. But we have a choice. And in the fact that we have that choice, we are given some sense of greatness and significance. And every single person has that choice. Now, I mean, Judaism is one particular, way. I don't think it's the only way, and I don't necessarily, for me, it's the best way, but it doesn't mean it's the best way for every single human being on earth. But I think there's certainly principles within Judaism that are shared by many other religions, if not all of them. Okay, that is formal, thoughtful religions that basically have the same principle. But Judaism really emphasizes and obsesses over the specifics of the mitzvot, of the commandments, of doing this, right? So it's a matter of belief, but it goes well beyond belief. It has to do with practice. And that's in a nutshell, right? One way of looking at what we're trying to do. So let me see if I can get this in today. I think I can. Right, so min haderech asher, from the way, the path, which I command you today to follow, right? To follow, in this case, it was to go and follow idols. Halamadata, and from this you can infer, shekol haoved avodat kochavim, that anyone who serves idols, right? Whether consciously, I suppose, there are many people who may be worshiping idols unconsciously because we tend to identify idolatry with fetishism, with worshiping images. But that's really not what it's about. It really is worshiping other things other than our divine creator. So, but he says, if they serve other, idols, or avodat kochavim means the worship of stars. Harei husar, behold, indeed, he he turns away mikol haderech, from everything else, from the entire path shenitztavu Yisrael, that the Jewish people were commanded. Mikan Amru, and from this they said, and this is in the Sifrei, that's the Midrashic halachic Midrash on Numbers and Deuteronomy. Kol hamodeh ba'avodat kochavim, anyone who acknowledges idolatry, kekofer b'chol Torah kula. It's as if, even if they practice other parts of the Torah, it is as if they are rejecting the entire Torah, everything about it. Now, there's a positive inference here, right? Which is if at least you recognize the fact that we are not the source of morality, that human beings are not the ultimate touchstone of what's right and wrong. If you're willing to accept that there is something transcendent, that there is a presence of which we derive our existence from, and then work from that point on, I think you could say that it's as if you've at least potentially observed the entire Torah. Because I don't believe that it is a matter of racking up points because one person did 15 mitzvahs and another person did 37 mitzvahs. I don't think it works like that. I think it has to do, at least I hope it's the truth, because clearly I am hardly an example of performing all 613 mitzvahs. But I think that the difference is this, that I give them a voice and that I try to allow them to influence my choices and my behaviors and to try and put them into practice as much as I can. At least that's my best side. And I recognize in my own heart and my own mind times when I have not acted where I could have. And that's the issue. Because a lot depends on to what degree and how many mitzvahs you actually practice has a lot to do with your personal life circumstances and where you live and to what degree you strive to do this. And I think, we need to understand that it's not a simple linear thing, but that it does have to do with a certain consciousness and a certain way in which one tries to live one's life in relationship to something that's universal and transcendent. And I am going to stop talking now and give you a chance. I'm going to stop the share. And if you'd like to just please respond, I would appreciate it before I stop the recording. So
the one thing that struck me through this, in the first part of the discussion today, when you were talking about having the blessings before, basically as opposed to after, what that struck me also was the idea of trust, right? We're being entrusted, so we get a blessing before we do perform the commandments as opposed to, being blessed afterwards, right? So it's basically providing a level of trust that people will actually do that. And it's trust that God places in us, right? So that—
1 second, David, I got to interrupt you. Judith, your camera is on. I just want you to know that I don't know if you can hear me, but your camera is on. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know if you knew that. And by the way, you have a beautiful home. Sorry, David, but I had to let her know that.
Sure.
Keep going. You're about the trust. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just saying that it just indicates that, we have a tremendous amount of trust placed in us. I think that's what that passage also means,
Yes.
because we're blessed before performing the commandments as opposed to afterwards, right? And it's something that we need to carry as an honor, as opposed to, yeah. So that's how I interpreted that. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention was, I was going to ask was, when you look at idolatry, does idolatry also extend to things like materialism? Do you want to say that?
Yes, I'm saying that. I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were saying.
Yes,
So yeah, we're not talking about this in the strict sense. We're talking about it in the general sense or the broad sense of worshiping something other than God, whether that's materialism or whatever it is that that takes you away from worshiping God. So okay.
Right. Yeah, it's the issue of the importance you place on it.
Yes.
And the issue isn't that it is important or not important. I'm not saying it's not important. It's the ultimate level. That's the part
Yes.
that is the problem, okay? Is when people put ultimate faith, ultimate trust, ultimate loyalty to something other than the divine source of all life. That's the problem. So, and the trouble is, of course, that when you pick any specific thing, because it could be in the arts, it could be in music, those are all wonderful and important things. But when you make them the ultimate, most important thing in your life, to neglecting the other things, this path that I'm describing, then you turn it into an idolatry. So you can turn almost anything into an idolatry.
Yep.
And
okay.
the issue is understanding what it means to worship, because most people think of worship sort of as prostrating and, and sort of incantation and that kind of stuff, or prayer. That's not what it's about. It has to do with where you put your ultimate value. What is the most important thing in your life? Look, and of course, family, we need to make family very, very important in our lives, but it is not the ultimate thing. Okay, the Torah is clear about that. But honoring your family is very, very important. It is, but it's not more important than worshiping God, than putting your ultimate trust in God. And that's a toughie. That's a very hard one to chew. By the way, in the repetition, I think there's a statement, it may be coming up in Deuteronomy. No, it's in Leviticus, in chapter 19 of Leviticus, where it says a man should fear his mother and his father and observe my Sabbaths. What does the one have to do with the other? First of all, the reason why it says fear mother before it says fear father is because it's showing you, this is the point that I make about the subtext being doing what doesn't come naturally. And since it's more natural to fear you, natural, of course there are exceptions, to fear your father, that's why it puts mother first. But what has that got to do with observing my Sabbaths? Because it's saying that if your mother and father tell you to desecrate the Shabbat, what do you do? And that is very challenging. But if your mother and father tell you to desecrate the Shabbat, you still keep the Shabbat, despite the fact that you're to fear them. It's a lot to think about, right? I mean, a lot to think about. And, I'll tell you the truth. What is going through my head now is the degree to which, I'm thinking of a specific case where I think a parent, it's not a local case, it's not anybody we personally know, but where a parent absolutely ruined their child by the values they taught that child. He's someone you all know.
Well, stop.
Exactly. I didn't want to get into politics, but that's what happened. That's what happened there. Terrible.
So, you know that I struggle with the concept of God.
Yes.
And maybe it's just the word God, because the feeling of appreciation, I thought touched me very deeply. And then, going by the rules of the order of how things need to be in order to flourish, putting that above, putting, this source of all, and that into our consciousness, and waking up with that appreciation, and that waking up, that consciousness that happens when you do that. And then you are stewards of the land. You do take care of your neighbor. Your family is important to you. I think that there's this very basic human thing that's happening. And it's coming up against so much resistance because of the naming of God.
Yeah,
People have all their own judgments. And I really do see so many people waking up I mean, I see a broad spectrum of peoples and how they're struggling with God and how they're going away from this organized religion concept of being told what God is into being available to the natural order of things so they can be stewards of the earth and do tikkun olam. And even if they have to, die with their last breath doing it, at least they're doing it. And I see that everywhere right now. So I think a lot of this is also where your perspective is, how you see things. How small is your world, or how big is your world?
right. And to what degree you trust tradition. I'm not certain what that term, forgive me, Lisa, organized religion really means, okay? Because I'm part of organized religion, if I suppose, if you want to call it that, but it's a framework. All I see is that, I'd be nowhere if I didn't, if they had not printed the Torah, if the Jewish Publication Society had never printed and was organized to print a Bible in English that I could read. All these, I'm so dependent on so many different people who have taught me, whether in person or on, whether formally or informally or in pages of the book. I certainly feel that one of the greatest teachers I've ever had was my wife, is my wife.
Yeah.
She has taught me so much. And in fact, what's very sweet is that I actually heard a rabbi at a wedding ceremony quote something from the Talmud, I think, and he was addressing the groom and said, that basically it says, young man, if you want to become knowledgeable, if you want to become wise, get married. I'm not saying, of course, that that's the only way you can do it, right? But I think there was such wisdom in that statement.
Yeah. Rabbi,
Yes.
please, I love to clarify things so that I am not misunderstood.
Please.
Yeah, I'm not saying that organized religion is bad. I'm saying that there are so many people. I'm not making this personal because
Yeah.
I'm part of organized religion too. Yeah, come on, even when I'm not a part of it, I'm a part of it.
That's right.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that there is a huge swath of us that have been turned off by organized religion and about
Agreed.
control issues
Yeah.
that people with their personalities have brought to it.
True.
So they are finding other ways. So that's why I am saying that my vision of what's going on in the world is very broad because of who I am interacting with and the things that we talk about. And then all of the different peoples that I choose to spend, slices of my time with to find out who they are.
Yeah.
And then I see these hearts are turning to, God, except the problem with the word God. I love how you turned me around about a year ago. God is shorthand. That was wonderful because it allowed me to embrace God.
Right. Right. I think also part of it, and it's very tough, but I think that a lot of people turned away from formal religion because they were uninspired. I think the reason why young people aren't coming to the synagogue, my synagogue, is that I've been incapable of reaching out to them and trying to, inspire them to the sense of opening their curiosity and stuff like that. There are other people who have been much more successful, but I have to look at it honestly. And it's not because they're not good people. It's just because, the leaders have failed to inspire.
You have just put your finger on something though, because I just disagree with you so much about you haven't done a good job. That's one thing. traditional values are very different. What I'm saying, it's the difference of organized religion. There are these two factions in organized religion. There's the religious and there's the political.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you, Lisa.
That's what I'm talking about, organized religion, not tradition,
Right.
not halakha. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about what has driven people away. You can have a great rabbi, and because of the politics, people turn elsewhere.
Good
That's
point.
all I was saying about organized religion, okay? Don't get me wrong, I'm part of it.
Right.
No, I am.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, I appreciate the clarification. I totally get it. And I agree with you on that. We're going to have to stop because it's already heading towards 10 after 8. So we need to start davening. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much. Let me stop it.